Thank you. So I don't know how many in here actually follows football, but if you do, I hope you've heard of Kick It Out. We're a campaigning organization that started in 1993 to tackle mainly racism back then within football because it was a massive issue within the football stands. Today, we tackle all forms of discrimination and we're funded by the governing body within football. And my role specifically is that I'm Kick It Out's reporting officer because what we do is that we campaign for equality and inclusion within football. We work with football clubs to help them promote it. But our most crucial role is that we are a third-party reporting bureau. So football in itself is very good at governing itself and have rules and practices in terms of when incidents happens, whether it's on the pitch, within the stands, and so forth. However, when it comes to social media, it's a bit of a gray area. So what happened was that supporters started coming to Kick It Out, saying, I saw this on Facebook or I saw this on Twitter, we don't know how to do. You look at what is being said and we know that if this was said on the pitch, the FA would take action immediately. However, when it comes to social media, there was no rules or no practices and no one in football was really tackling the issue. So we took it upon ourselves to start doing it. So as I mentioned, we took it upon ourselves to start doing it, and we didn't know where to start. So we started talking with the Ministry of Justice, with the police, and to sort of say, how do we tackle this? And this is only about 3 or 4 years ago that we started doing it, so it was quite fresh. But the issue that you have within football today is that lots of incidents used to happen in the stands back in the days. A lot of racist abuse towards black footballers and so forth. And what's happened is now the issues within the stands are not as big, they still exist, but instead it has moved on to social media. So what happens is mainly it's actually football fans self-policing, which is something we encourage. So it's football fans who see another football fan posting something abusive. And I don't know how much you know about English football, but it's very territorial. It's a lot Spurs fans against Arsenal fans or West Ham fans against Chelsea fans and so forth. And there's a lot of emotions flying. And in this, we see a lot of hate crime occurring. We report incidents both to the platforms, to the police, to the FA, or to football clubs. What we do, there's no really a set standard of what we do. It's a very case-by-case basis. And at the moment, we can handle that because at the moment, we do not receive that many reports. There's a large element of underreporting, I would say. So what we do when we do get a report is that it's up to me. I'm the only person who deals with it at our charity, where there's only 14 people of us working across the country. I have to make an assessment of what to do with it, what I think is best, which is a very difficult process to explain, to be honest. But one thing that we see as a campaigning organization is just how high the level of abuse can be when it comes to social media. I see a lot of difference of what is being shouted at the heat of the moment when you're watching your team lose and you're standing in the stand and you're a season ticket holder compared to what you see on social media. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you a couple of tweets. They're quite sensitive, but I want to show you what we actually, as a body, see on a daily basis. Can you see them? I really do not want to read them out. But what you can see is sort of one tweet directed at us where we were promoting a black footballer, and where there's both homophobic abuse in it and racist abuse. Spurs, Tottenham Hotspurs, they get a lot of anti-Semitic abuse, and quite often it's linked to the Holocaust. I have seen supporters posting pictures of piles of dead bodies from Auschwitz in reference to Spurs fans, which is quite terrific. I think you all agree with me. We also see there's a lot of what can I say? There's a lot of supporters group that try, especially for gay fans and so forth, that receives threats and abuse on social media that if you come to the match and you're there, we're going to hurt you, and so forth, where we work closely with the police to resolve it. But the problem we see is that the abuse on social media tends to be a lot more targeted, a lot more vile, and something that is just not shouted in real life. It seems like as if people take it up a couple of notch, which is one of the biggest challenges we see. And so what has happened, I'm just going to show you a little bit of background, is that we started doing this at the season of 2012 and 13. This was the first time it happened. This is when we started, okay, what do we do with this? Received 12 reports of abuse on social media. The following season, when my role was created, it got up to 142, which is a massive increase. And then last season, it was 165 reports. Now, there's millions of football fans and players in English football. So we thought, surely we're not seeing the bigger picture here. Surely we're not seeing everything that comes into us. So what we did about a year ago is that we got in touch with two companies called Tempo and Brandwatch and said, is there any way where we can search social media platforms for abuse and see how much is actually going on within English football? And they said yes. So together with them, we wrote down what kind of words are being used across all discrimination. We limited down to the 20 top Premier League clubs, because we had to limit the search in one way. And they then, for free of charge, wrote an algorithm where it had to be some kind of abusive language being used related to the 9 protected strands. It had to relate to the top 20 football clubs or their players. And so it's very specific within football, but yet the numbers that we received were quite terrifying. So between August 2014 and March 2015, they found that there were 134,555 instances of abuse. That is one abusive post every 2.6 minutes, aimed at footballers, at clubs, or amongst fans, which shows that our number, 165 reported incidents, is very, very low. Now, the thing is, we as a body, we do not have the capacity to look for abuse. We only act on what's being reported to us because that's our role as a reporting body. But we needed to show the numbers to the governing bodies within football so they realized how big the scale of the problem was. So I'm just going to... So this is what it looked like when you break down the numbers. As you can see, the big 5 football clubs, which is Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, and Manchester City, are the ones that gets the most abuse. All the posts that were posted were UK-based. They wrote an algorithm as well to make sure that it's UK-based. Mario Balotelli, I don't know how much you know about him. He's a black footballer. He can be seen as being quite provocative, but he single-handedly received 1,471 abuses during this period. 40% of them occurred on Twitter with his Twitter name tagged in it, which means that he actually gets notifications of this abuse, of him being called a black, etc., and so forth. Now, if you see the little green bit there, that's the number of reports that came into us. So as you can see, that's a very small percentage. And then there's a little red dot there. I don't know if you can see it. But that signifies the instances where we had some kind of positive outcome out of all of that, either with the police being able to identify the offenders and taking action, or ourselves doing a rehabilitation education session with the offenders. So that's what we're tackling within English football at the moment. It's not great. What Temper and Bradwatch did as well, where they broke it down in terms of gender. It's not really working for me. So they looked at the abuse by gender, and they found out that 78% of the abuse were posted by men, and 22% were posted by women. Now, the interesting bit is here, the Premier League and the governing bodies have sort of a research of how many of the supporters in this country are female and how many of them are men. So they compared to that and found out that men are 11% more likely to post abuse online within English football. I'm not an academic, so I do not have the answer to why it is that, but I can just imagine why. Now, thank you. The challenges we see are obviously, as we've spoken about today, quite a lot. But one is, for example, the police. Now, we know that the police are under-budgeted, under a lot of pressure, but in my role, it's very difficult because we, on a weekly basis, report hate crime to the police when it comes to social media, and there is a lack of understanding amongst the police forces. I cannot tell you how many times I've had a police officer coming into my office to take a statement and asking me what Twitter is. And we also see kind of a difference of sometimes we do find that some types of abuse are taken more seriously than others. So some reports we put in, the police do not even respond to. There's also, you have the lack of knowledge within football, how it works, the lack of knowledge of reporting, the lack of knowledge what actually is a hate crime, what is abusive to say, what words can you use and what can you not use, which is something we try to educate, especially young players, about. One challenge is football in itself, where football for a long time I've had a self-image that, you know, we've cleaned up ourselves. We don't have any issues within football. It's fine. It's not happening within the stands. People are not throwing bananas anymore at black footballers, where we have to tell them there's still an issue. It's just that it's going on social media and we do not see it. The platforms, lack of response from the platforms. A lot of times you've got trolls on Twitter who keeps on setting new accounts, posting the same kind of abuse, and there's kind of a lack of response from the platforms to close down those accounts. Or if you report something to Twitter, if you've ever have done it, you might go to the police, but then the Twitter tells police we're listed in the US. In order for you to get the details behind this account, you have to go via court to the US, which you would only do under rare occasions. The law in itself, which we've addressed earlier today, where it seems the law is lagging a bit behind compared to how abuse is being posted in today's society. And then, as I mentioned, the level. I cannot stress that enough, that the abuse I see compared to what's happening on a grassroots pitch between 15-year-olds and what a fan is shouting out at the heat of the moment in the stand, compared to what we see on Twitter, is just so much more vile and abusive. And so what do we see as the solution then? What we've done since we released this research is that we realized we really have to do something to tackle this. So what we did is that we've put together a social media expert group, we call it, where we have the Ministry of Justice, we have police, we have the governing bodies, Twitter and Facebook sits on it as well. We've got people from academia, we've got MPs sitting in it, where we meet quarterly to try to talk, how can we campaign, how can we educate, what can we do to tackle this within football? Because at the end of the day, for us, the most important bit to challenge it is to do counter speech and to educate. A lot of times it's young fans and young people who might not know what they're doing or what they're saying and what it means. So for us, it then becomes important to educate. We don't necessarily want to imprison everyone who has a social media account, but rather, where do we start? So that's what we're doing at the moment. And there will be a very exciting campaign coming during the Euros 2016. So keep your eyes open. That's all I'm allowed to say at the moment, unfortunately.